All right, let's get right into it. What we're talking about today is, well, it's a roadmap with the highest stakes imaginable. It's a plan to solve some of humanity's biggest, thorniest problems. And the wild part? According to the source material for this explainer, everything, and I mean everything, hinges on what we do in the next 18 months.
Now look, this isn't just my take. This is the central idea from a piece called Solve Everything. And the argument is, well, it's a big one. It's that the choices we're making right now, today, are going to echo for a century, maybe even more. We're not just talking about another tech trend here. This is being framed as a genuine turning point for all of civilization.
So you've got to be asking why? Why this 18-month window? What makes this moment so critical? Well, it all boils down to this really powerful concept called technological lock-in. The basic idea is that whenever a huge, new, foundational technology shows up, the very first decisions we make about how it's built and what it's for, they tend to stick permanently. Yup, just 18 months. That's the window we're looking at. Why? Because as we speak, the fundamental rules, the actual infrastructure for artificial superintelligence is being designed and built. And you have to think of it like laying down railroad tracks. Once those rails are in the ground, it is incredibly hard, almost impossible, to just rip them up and change direction. We are literally setting the patterns that generations after us will be forced to follow. And if you want a perfect everyday example of this, just look down at your keyboard. The QWERT layout? It was designed way back in the day to solve a purely mechanical problem, to keep the little arms on old-school typewriters from jamming into each other. That problem disappeared, 100 years ago? And yet, here we are still typing on it. It's locked in. So the decisions we're making about AI today, it's like we're designing the keyboard for the entire future of human thought. We absolutely have to get this right.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and put this all in a bit of historical context. If you think about it, you could say human history is just a series of revolutions, each one a war on some kind of scarcity, right? The scientific revolution was a war on ignorance. The industrial revolution, a war on the limits of our own muscles. The digital revolution was a war on distance. And now? Well, now we find ourselves in the middle of the fourth great revolution, the intelligence revolution. And this time, we're fighting the scarcity of human thought itself.
And that brings us to the absolute core of this whole thing. The fundamental shift. The very nature of intelligence is changing. It's going from something rare, something handcrafted, artisanal, to something that's abundant and industrial. So when we say cognition, what are we even talking about? Well, think of it as the engine of all human progress. It's that spark, the process of having an idea, figuring out a tough problem, creating something totally new. And for every single moment of human history up until now, that engine has had a hard limit. It was limited by the number of human brains on the planet and how much attention those brains could muster. Well, that limit, it's about to basically disappear. The metaphor the source uses it's really powerful. They say to imagine intelligence, cognition itself, becoming a utility, something you can just pour onto a problem, like flipping a switch for electricity or turning on a tap for water. In this new world, GPUs are basically the new oil wells. And we are on the verge of having a nearly unlimited supply of this brand new resource. But of course, like any resource that powerful, it can be used for good or for bad. It can be productive or it can be incredibly destructive. The analogy here is that superintelligence is like a shaped charge, an explosive. If you just let it go off, you get a big, useless boom, a mess. But if you build a nozzle, if you channel that exact same force, you get a rocket engine. So the single most important question is, where are we going to aim that rocket?
And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi theory. This is already happening. We are already seeing what happens when we aim this power correctly. The term for it is domain collapse, and the perfect example is AlphaFold 3. Think about this. The problem of protein folding used to take brilliant scientists years of PhD work for a single protein. AlphaFold came along and basically solved it for millions of proteins, like overnight. An entire field of science just, poof, collapsed into an engineering problem that we can solve at scale. And that's what's on the horizon for physics, for chemistry, for biology. Okay, so this brings us to what's really the central choice of our era. We are standing at a massive fork in the road with two completely different futures ahead of us. It's a choice between what the source material calls the muddle and the machine. Let's break that down. Path number one is the muddle. This is where this incredible, world-changing power gets, Well, it gets wasted. It's used to sell us more stuff with better ad optimization, to generate endless bureaucratic paperwork, and to create silly virtual distractions. The result? Stagnation, dystopia even. Then there's the other path, the machine. This is where we take that same superintelligence and we aim it laser-focused at humanity's biggest, grandest challenges. The result there? A genuine age of abundance, potentially by 2035. So what does that abundance even look like? What are we talking about? Well, it looks like this. These are the moonshots. These are the grand challenges we could finally solve. We're talking about extending human health span to 120 years or more, actually reversing aging, creating human organs on demand, ending hunger for good, cracking fusion energy. Even becoming a multi-planetary species and finally solving physics. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Looking at that list, it's easy to dismiss it as pure science fiction. And you know what? A few years ago, you'd have been right. But the whole argument here is that the industrialization of cognition changes the entire game. These stop being questions of pure, maybe one-day scientific discovery, and they start becoming engineering problems. Problems we can solve simply by pointing enough computational power at them. So, okay, if we accept that these are now solvable problems, how do we actually do it? How do we build this future? This isn't just about wishful thinking. There's a really concrete, practical plan for building the systems, the rails, that lead us to that future of abundance. The whole plan is built on a framework they call the industrial intelligence stack. It's a step-by-step process. You start with purpose. What's the actual goal? Then you create a task taxonomy. That's the map of the entire problem space. You gather all the data you need for observability. And then, and this is the key part, you build a targeting system. Remember that nozzle for the rocket? This is it. This is what directs the AI model, the brain. And finally, you have actuation, the hands that actually go out and implement the solutions in the real world. And this leads to a really critical insight. The real power, the true value, isn't just in building the AI model itself, the brain. Honestly, the models are quickly becoming commodities. The real, long-term defensible value is in the infrastructure you build around it, especially that targeting system. Because think about it. Whoever gets to define success, whoever writes the scorecard, they control the entire game. So if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, what's the takeaway? It's pretty clear. Start looking for the next big scientific domain that's about to collapse. And don't just build another thin-layer app on top of somebody else's AI. Go deeper. Build the fundamental infrastructure, the benchmarks, the evaluation systems, the data pipelines. Build the things that everyone else is going to need. In other words, become the primitive. And for investors, the message is basically the same. The huge generational opportunity isn't in funding the next AI model. Those are the trains. And trains are becoming commodities pretty fast. The real strategic play here is to fund the rails, the underlying infrastructure that all those trains are going to be running on for the next 50 years. And listen, this isn't just a message for founders and venture capitalists. This is for all of us. The message is simple and it's urgent. Start building with these tools now. There's a strong argument that this period of relatively open access to the most powerful frontier models, it's not going to last forever. So use this moment. Use it to become a creator, someone who directs AI, not just a consumer who gets replaced by it. Find a big problem that you actually care about. Pick your moonshot and get to work. You know, this quote really sums up the whole paradigm shift perfectly. The era of the lone genius working in isolation is over. It's dead. Handcrafted artisanal intelligence is a thing of the past. What comes next is the full-scale industrialization of cognition. And so that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. The future isn't some abstract thing that just happens to us. It's not predetermined. The future we get is going to be the direct result of the thousands of choices we all make and the things we decide to build right now in this incredibly critical 18-month window. So the question for you, for all of us, is what will you build?